Is Umar Malik, and I did my project on media and its influence on police perceptions in the United States. Now, the reason why I chose this topic is because it is clear to see that there are current issues in American society between a gap of law enforcement and the community. And media plays a huge role in this because it is how our information is shared and our information is perceived. In addition, there have been recent cases, specifically that I mentioned in my paper, where Eric Gardner and Michael Brown, that did show media emphasizing heavy use of excessive force by law enforcement, which did contribute to many deaths in their hands. And the reason why this is an important topic is because media continues to shape and form our perceptions of law enforcement, and getting a better understanding of media and its influence helps us get a better understanding of the elements of policing. Now, one of the important keys is defining media. Media can come in many forms. The two main ones that I focused on were broadcast and social media. And the reason why these two were very important were because there was a consistency that did show that although there are all forms of media are different, the debate between law enforcement use of force was consistent. And in addition, studies did show that since 2012, the usage of social media has doubled. And that is important to recognize because that is one of the essential outlets for U.S. citizens to obtain news. In addition, another study did show that although social media has become more popular in obtaining news, people did still find that videos that showed use of force were more trustworthy when they were contributed on national TV news, which would be broadcast media, compared to social media outlets. Race is another big key issue because it is where movements like Black Lives Matter have vocalized their opinions of law enforcement, specifically excessive force and the usage of force that is more than necessary. And the reason why this is very important is because studies did show that race did have a correlation between people's perception of law enforcement, specifically Black and Hispanic Americans, as they were more likely than whites to report having negative interactions with police. Use of force is also a very big topic in my paper. The reason is because use of force defines and lays out the boundaries of how and why law enforcement make decisions and what type of force they do use. They can stem from the most extreme being deadly force to the lowest being no weapon at all. Another key issue was body worn cameras. Body worn cameras is very important because, especially in recent years, they have done studies to see and analyze if body worn cameras would effectively not only make citizens feel safer, but if they would decrease the use of excessive force by law enforcement. The study that was completed in 2015 in California did show that incidents did decrease. Of use of force, specifically excessive force, by law enforcement, and citizens did feel that this would be an important issue and an important way to move forward having body worn cameras because it would impact law enforcement's decision to use force when they encounter citizens, as well as law enforcement felt that it will improve their behavior and citizens' behaviors during interactions. And here's another diagram that shows the positivities of body worn cameras based off of research, and more people in general found that they would feel safer and police will have more respect towards citizens in general with body worn cameras. Labeling theory was an important theory that was founded in 1960 that is relevant to my paper. The reason is because, in general, labeling theory means and follows the basis that a label is created based upon actions or behaviors that are seen as deviant. Deviant is something that is unordinary or something that we are not used to, and the media is guilty of this because they do have created a lot of labels based upon their coverage of use of force through social and broadcast medium. Specifically, they have created a label with their coverage attacking law enforcement a lot, making them seem all as racist, which in addition, there has been another label that has been created against African Americans as more dangerous and prone to fight back, as the coverage does focus a lot on cases where rioting has been more prevalent because of use of force being excessive um, by law enforcement, specifically the Black Lives Matter movement. They have been perceived more negatively on and in media, which has caused more tension and has caused a label created against African Americans. Social learning theory was another important theory that kind of helps us understand how behaviors, personal and environmental factors influence our behaviors, which is acquired by observing others. This was found in 1973, and the reason why this was important in my paper was because the focus on Black Lives Matter movement through broadcast and social media heavily showed activist groups, kind of having to, in order to obtain justice, they must riot, they must loot, they must get as much attention as possible. And that kind of did influence other citizens that did observe, and they kind of felt that, hey, in order for us to get heard or spoken of, we must, riot and must do the most in order for media to catch it and spread this news so that law enforcement can listen to us when it comes to police brutality and excessive force. Surveying is an important methodology that is used by many because it does help compose and get a variety of answers from many, and then kind of bring that together to find a solution based off of what the survey participants said. One of the surveys did say that 86% of participants believe that with the use of body-worn cameras, police would be more respectful towards citizens. In addition, the failures of surveying was there was a lot of these surveys did not include the most affected groups, which was Latin and African Americans, and which to make up 60% of the population, which kind of failed representation of these groups and showed the results could be skewed. Case studies is also an effective way where they analyze groups and persons based off of reporting, literature, and media. This was important in the Black Lives Matter movement because a lot of these case studies focus on why and how these groups were founded and what they have done in order to, vocalize and kind of what their purpose was, because there are a lot of misconceptions through media. So I feel that case studies was important to kind of show and understand what their purpose is and why they are doing what they are doing. Now, the ethical concern, the biggest one that came to mind is law enforcement have to accept and uphold a code of ethics when they swear in as officers. Chief of police have a tough decision when a deadly force is used, because they must be careful what they share with media, as the general public and the families of the victims do get this information. In addition, they have to be conscious of what they say, because everyone, including the officer and the possible suspect or offender, is innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. So everything that is shared through media by the chief of police must be carefully evaluated and must be carefully shared. Now, it is clear to see that broadcast and social media influence United States citizens' perception of law enforcement. There are current issues of police brutality and use of force that have had heavy coverage in media, and that's why a lot of people's perceptions have been negatively viewed and negatively influenced by this. I think the best way in order for us to learn the gap between law enforcement and citizens is to minimize what is going on based off of excessive force, kind of evaluate what is the key way of addressing a lot of these issues when it comes to law enforcement. At the same time, citizens must keep an open mind in the information that is shared in media, because it's not always correct.